Bad computer. No, you're a good computer. Hello, and don't worry, today is going to be a great day. Today we will be discussing 100 Days of Sunlight by Abbie Emmons. Next month we'll be discussing One Final Vinyl by Savy Leiser. As always, I will leave a link in the description to where you can find both books. And again, this video will contain spoilers. As per the trend so far, this is another book I found solely based off of the social media. I actually got an ad on YouTube for Abbie Emmons' YouTube channel, and it's probably the only one I've ever actually clicked on and went and checked out the channel. Abbie gives writing advice on her channel, and I sort of have an unofficial rule that before I take any writing advice seriously, I kind of read the author's work to see whether I actually like their work or not. Then I'll know which advice to take more to heart and what I think I didn't particularly like. So a few months later, when she released her novel, I decided to read it. If I didn't know her channel, I probably wouldn't have read this book. To be honest, I'm more of the fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal area of fiction. That's what I prefer. I prefer the huge twist on reality as opposed to just a normal fiction book that could happen to anyone in theory at any time. Although I am very happy I found her channel and very happy I found this book because I did enjoy it a lot. I wasn't a huge fan of the first couple chapters though. I thought they were a little drawn out and overdramatic, and I was concerned about the rest of the book, but pretty shortly into the book it kind of picked up pace and got into the good stuff. I think I read this book in like 4 days or something. Like, this was a quick read for me. I ordered a new book halfway through reading it. It's been like 3-4 more days since I finished, and the book's still not going to come here for at least 5 more days. So the plot was pretty realistic in my opinion, and all the medical stuff, I'm not an expert when it comes to medical stuff, but it was close enough that it wouldn't give me any reason to doubt it. It could be perfectly accurate, I never looked it up, but it didn't feel unrealistic in any way. I really liked the characters. There weren't a lot of them. It was mostly just Weston and Tessa. They were the main characters. It was from their points of view, and the story was mostly told of them being together, although you did see a lot more of Weston without Tessa, because Weston had parts where he was talking about how he had lost his legs. So that was before he even knew Tessa. So you got to see a little bit more of who Weston was by himself, which I think was nice, whereas you didn't really get that with Tessa. Whenever we went to Tessa's perspective, she was thinking and talking about Weston. So you didn't really get to see as much of her, but I still really liked the characters, and I think the two were developed pretty well and actually were dynamic characters as opposed to just flat, made-up pieces of perfection. And going along with that, I really liked Weston's friendship with Rudy. It was actually emotionally grounded and stable, and not like two soulless beasts that don't get along. So it was a nice relationship, and I think she wrote the 2 male characters and their relationship well, and that like an actual reason why they're friends, as opposed to just, how some people tend to write males in fiction as giant brutes without emotion. With this being said, there were a few things I didn't really like. The first was the character design. Granted, there wasn't very many characters to design, which limits how much diversity you can have in your characters if like everyone's related to each other. But it just I didn't like how the two main characters were both blonde hair, blue eyes. It just felt weird. I mean, at least Weston had gray blue eyes instead of like an identical like sky blue or something. So at least I did have that diversity, but come on, the characters look alike. You could have added something different. As I mentioned in my previous book club video, I'm not a giant fan of authors writing themselves in as the main character. This book definitely had that. I've read 5 books so far this year. I know I'm kind of behind. It's not a lot. It's a bad. But I've read 5 whole books this year. 1 was nonfiction. Of the 4 remaining fiction books, 3 of the main characters were writers. 3 out of 4 fiction books essentially wrote themselves in as the character. Some more than others, and like I said, with The Ghost of Buxton Manor, I didn't mind that one as much. I thought it was more endearing and more of a tribute to his relationship than just writing himself in. This book just got a little bit under my skin. At least this book, it had to do with the plot. Whereas with the Elysian Prophecy, in that book, one of my pet peeves was that they never brought that back into the story, so it was kind of irrelevant details. At least in this one, it was part of the plot. She needed someone to read her things, and that's how they meet. However, she kind of dropped it halfway through and only brought it up once at the very end. I think it could have played a more important role. But there were a few other details that seemed to emerge directly from the author's life. These include her writing squad and the waffles, which, to be fair, I don't know if she loves waffles, but in her acknowledgments she mentioned hashtag Team Waffles, so I'm pretty sure with that one. Oh, and the character looks just like her. The first time I read the description, I immediately thought of Abbie Emmons, because that's kind of exactly what she looks like. I can imagine her room being the exact same way, just based off of what I've seen on her channel. But hey, that's just my opinion. I just really like the idea of a guy without legs trying to help a girl who's temporarily blind and have to listen to her complain constantly. It was a cute story. It was a cute love story. I think the end could have been written slightly different, but I do like the ending of how they met in the park and outside the house as opposed to in the house, because, you know, the entire point was to try and get her to go out as well. I love the threat. I love when she threatened him. She's like, yeah, no, we're meeting. I don't care if I have to come to your house and force my way in, but we're meeting. I thought the romance in the book was pretty realistic. It sort of built up over time. It just felt a little choppy because of the jumps in time between the chapters, since she wasn't writing like every single day. But still, over the course of the 100 days, it was actually believable that they were growing fond of each other, and not just like, oh, one day she's yelling at him, the next she wants to kiss him and be with him forever. It felt more natural in that it turned from this hostility towards him and him just trying to help her to, oh, they're actually friends, to, oh, they're actually a little more than friends. So I thought that was very nice, because some authors tend to mess that up and make it too instant without a reason. Because when we're talking about instant romance, like the whole idea of love at first sight kind of stuff, I think that can be written well, but I think it needs to be a deliberate act as opposed to just happening, because most people aren't going to have love at first sight kind of thing. They might have an instant connection with someone, but it's not going to be love at first sight. Sight's a bit of a pun in this situation because she's blind, but I like how it wasn't that, and it was more building up over time, and it took forever to have their first kiss. So that felt a lot more natural. But like I was trying to say, I don't always think love at first sight is a bad thing. I mean, in The Ghost of Buxton Manor, that was essentially love at first sight, but there was a deliberate reason for that, because they were dealing with the idea of soulmates, which are, in that book, they were describing more like one soul split in half. So obviously they're going to have an instant connection every time they meet, and they kind of, alright, they meet 3 times in that book. When they originally meet their first life, and then Rupert meets Erin's second life. And then in Rupert's second life, but Erin's third life, they meet again. All 3 times it's an instant connection, where they instantly want to, like, just be together. Like, they instantly fall for each other. But I think that is okay because of the whole soulmate thing, whereas most other books, unless you're deliberately planning on something similar to that, or have a reason why it needs to be instant, I think it's better to have it more generic over time, built up. And I really like how she did that. I mean, it was a romance, so it kind of would have been odd if she had just had that instant connection and went their ways. There wouldn't really have been any conflict, since that was really the only story in the book, was that romance. And not to say it's the only story, because they did have the entire aspect of teaching each other how to persevere through dark times. I really like that, and I really like the idea of him not wanting to be seen, even though he spent his whole past 3 years, like, overcoming the hardest obstacle. To have him fall even after all this time just kind of shows that it's going to be a lifelong struggle. And I kind of like that idea of him trying so hard and still not being perfect at it. I just thought that was really nice. Do authors writing themselves into the book bother you? Where do you think the line is between fiction and a fantasy autobiography? Did you like the nods to Abbie's life in the book? What did you think of the story? Please feel free to leave your thoughts down below. That's going to be it. For now, a smiley farewell, and always remember, nothing is ever only one thing.